Building Expectations, Delivering Results is the biannual report on the assets in education field released by the Assets in Education Initiative at the School of Social Welfare at the University of Kansas. Dr. William Elliott, Director of Aedi, discusses the role that asset-building initiatives, specifically children's savings accounts, could play in improving educational outcomes and increasing educational equity, the core themes of the biannual report.
Evidence from the biannual report on the assets in education field, building expectations, delivering results, shows that even having a few $100s in savings designated for education is significantly associated with a child's educational outcomes. Low and moderate income students with less than $500 designated for college are 3 times more likely to enroll and 4 times more likely to graduate from college than their peers. Understanding how and why assets affect student achievement is key to building the political will to create CSA structures capable of delivering these educational outcomes. Here, building expectation, delivering results can serve as a catalyst in the field. CSAs build on over a decade of research showing that for students to achieve their potential, institutions around them need to support their use of effort and ability in school, what I am calling institutional facilitation. Institutional facilitation model suggests that normative expectations, norms, are formed in response to experience and provide children with initial information about how the world ought to work. These norms equip children with the necessary knowledge and sense of predictability to begin to investigate and influence their world. However, once children enter school, they begin to test normative expectations more extensively. When children first enter school, their self-efficacy, their belief in their ability to accomplish what they set out to do is high. It is high in part because young children are unaware of differences in access to institutional capabilities. So they view the range of behaviors they can perform successfully as almost limitless. Around 4th grade, children begin to make efficacy judgments based on a new awareness that there are differences in access to institutional capabilities. At this point, they begin making more mature judgments that include both self-efficacy and institutional efficacy judgments. This limits the range of behaviors they perceive as available to them, and efficacy judgments become more predictive of behavior. They repeat making judgments and performing a pattern of behaviors until they feel they can accurately predict their ability to bring about future outcomes through a pattern of behavior. It is suggested that for humans to function optimally as agents of change, institutions must be predictable in their interactions with other human beings and organizations. All qualities of high institutional efficacy. Within the institutional facilitation framework, predictability is achieved when effort and ability are consistently perceived as producing a particular outcome, desired or undesired. People who are consistently forced to find alternative patterns of behavior to achieve results similar to others are at a competitive disadvantage. So they spend unnecessary effort to reach where others start. These extraordinary efforts do not produce social change. They do not create new development for society, only individual change. This results in wasted potential and lost productive capacity on the macro level, particularly disturbing as the U.S. seeks to build a strong economic footing for future global competitiveness. At this point, cognitive expectations are formed and internalized as part of an identity, a college-bound identity. Once cognitive expectations are internalized as part of an identity, children act on them when they are important, feel congruent, that is, align with their beliefs about their group identity, and provide a strategy for overcoming difficulty, that is, difficulty is interpreted as normal. Because cognitive expectations only make up one aspect of an identity, they may only partially explain behavior. Identities likely consist of several domain-specific cognitive expectations. In the case of schools, for example, they may consist of both an academic and financial domain. When a particular identity is cued, cognitive expectations associated with an identity are emphasized, and children have an automatic psychological and, in turn, a physiological response to the identity. While these responses are automatic, acting on them is not. For cognitive expectations to be changed, the automatic response must be interrupted by change in children's environments. This interruption allows children to question whether another way of viewing the outcome is available to them, from seeing college change from closed to open, for example. This model, then, helps to explain how and why asset accumulation can have significant effects on children's identities and therefore their educational outcomes, by illuminating the psychological changes that such savings can induce. Institutional facilitation is built on the realization that in a highly specialized and technical society like ours, institutions augment our use of effort and ability in ways that can create artificial winners and losers. For example, I used to have a Walmart mountain bike, and I struggled to pedal my kid long distances in the bike trailer. When I bought a fancier, newer bike from a specialty store, instantly it seemed as though I was stronger. This is because specialized bike designers spend all of their time thinking about how to make people go farther, faster, while using less effort. Their advances are made possible because today's bike designers inherit a vast body of knowledge about bike designs, allowing them to move beyond where their predecessors left off. Individuals can then benefit from these bike designers' capacity and the advantages their machines bestow, but only if they have the resources to access them. Unlike bike designers, disadvantaged children don't have the same access to knowledge that has been built up in our institutions that make specialization possible in America as the envy of the postmodern world. Applying this to college, disadvantaged children are often first-generation students, and their families are ill-equipped to provide them with the knowledge they need to take college preparatory classes or fill out the FAFSA. Their schools may fail to step into the breach, perhaps not even viewing them as college-bound, or at least not bound for a four-year college. Therefore, these students have to invest some portion of their effort and ability into figuring out the college process and setting themselves on the path that could have been used for specializing. They have to work harder just to keep up with their more advantaged peers, just as I had to before I bought the better bike. In turn, they not only lose out on the potential human capital development, but society loses out. Turning back to the bike ride, over time it becomes increasingly hard for me to discern that the bike is augmenting my ability. The process of forgetting about the role the bike plays can be said to be normal. It is much like we forget about our lungs so long as we can breathe normally, or how students whose college expectations have been shaped by their parents' promises of future higher education may fail to see these seemingly invisible influences. However, in America, not all people have equal opportunity to accumulate wealth, leaving us with a system that creates artificial winners and losers. Artificial because the winners are not always the people who exert the most effort or have the most ability. For example, Shapiro and colleagues, 2013, find that a $1 increase in income later translates to a $5 increase in wealth for whites, but only 70 cents for blacks. It is worth pointing out that this doesn't mean that someone on a Walmart bike, for example, cannot win the race. It does mean that in order to win, she will have to work a lot harder than me riding my fancy bike. It is in this way that institutions can facilitate artificial winners and losers. Of course, when we're talking about students whose aspirations to attend college after high school graduation wilt before they make it to enrollment, or whose likelihood of college graduation is compromised by the strains that accompany high-dollar debt, the stakes are considerably higher than my bike ride. As an example specific to college loans, a student who goes to college and graduates with higher amounts of student debt has to work much harder to reach the same level of wealth accumulation as a student who graduates from college but does not have student loans. Elliott III find that living in a household with a four-year college graduate with outstanding student debt is associated with having about $186,000 less net worth, compared to living in a household with a four-year college graduate without outstanding student debt. Yes, the child who graduates with student loans is better off than she would be if she did not graduate. Research on economic mobility is clear that a college degree is still a conduit to greater financial security. But this does not change the fact that effort and ability do not lead to similar outcomes in enrollable institutions, some present, others leftovers from times past, artificially make winners and losers. Therefore, institution facilitation suggests that in today's world, what one can do, whether one group is successful or not, can only be understood within the context of institutions. The right to own individual financial assets provides people with capacity to participate in, negotiate with, influence, control, and hold accountable institutions that affect their lives. It also can provide one child with what most of us would call an unfair advantage over another, equally skilled child. When we provide children, particularly low-income children, with individual assets, we are essentially providing them with the power to access and command societal resources needed to reach the American dream. The opposite would also have to be true, of course. When we do not provide children with access to individual assets, we're essentially denying them command over societal resources they need to reach the American dream. Within institutional facilitation model, role expectations provide a way to discuss the creation of advantage and disadvantage. Role expectations differ from cognitive expectations in that they are part of the institutional context. Society forms and shares them for the group to which an individual belongs. As such, they can be thought of as specifying a role that a person is to play in society. In contrast, the individual, as a result of his or her experiences, these experiences may differ from person to person within a particular group, with using effort and ability to achieve desired outcomes forms cognitive expectations unique to the individual's experiences. Regardless of children's cognitive expectations, they are forced to perform school-related activities in the context of socially shared role expectations for them. Role expectations that create advantage for some children unevenly increase the amount of return a child can expect to receive from investing effort and ability into schooling. Role expectations that disadvantage some children reduce the amount of return a child can expect to receive from investing effort and ability into school. In the ideal scenario, institutions would be held constant, and variation in outcomes would be the result of personal capabilities, effort, and ability. In other words, if U.S. society works the way many Americans believe it does, normative expectations and role expectations would be in harmony with one another. Role expectations are critical because they represent the ongoing struggle and institutionalization of rules that divert resources to be used to augment certain groups' use of effort and ability and not others, constraining the actions of those groups whose members are not provided institutional benefits. More specifically, role expectations result from a struggle between individuals, strategic actors, over the distributional advantage that institutions provide. In a capitalistic society, those who have wealth are in a position of power over those who do not have as much wealth when it comes to a bargaining situation, such as a negotiation over where societal resources should be spent. To maintain advantage, those who have wealth must transform this power into right. People with wealth transform their power into right by structuring role expectations so they constrain the actions of minority groups and the poor. Role expectations make it more or less likely that children enroll in college, and exceptions do not belie the underlying pattern of disparity. Therefore, for example, it is not surprising that high-achieving, low-income children are less likely to enroll in college than are high-achieving, high-income children. Changing the distributional consequences of role expectations in the bargaining power of minority and low-income children is a way to change role expectations that are in conflict with normative expectations. In the current system, either low-income parents are expected to provide the resources for challenging these roles expectations, or this interruption is to occur through some philanthropic organization. Public institutions have largely retreated from this responsibility with the rise in college costs. The existence of limited private resources to supplement family capabilities might be a part of a reason why we see a smattering of success. Some inexplicably succeed, while others inexplicably fail among low-income children. Low-income parents are at a disadvantage for providing the kind of institutional context needed to counteract disadvantaged role expectations. Further, philanthropic groups do not provide a comprehensive, systematic strategy for providing all low-income children with the institutional context they need to overcome disadvantageous role expectations. They might provide boots to an individual child when the media calls attention to a child who is without boots, but without adequately addressing the structural factors that led to the child's lacking a necessity like boots in the first place. Especially given evidence to suggest that assets' effects on educational outcomes can be realized at relatively low levels of investment, however, there is reason to suspect that public support for widespread, even universal, children's savings may succeed where reliance on individual or sporadic efforts has not. As part of a public commitment to more equal access to higher education, a national CSA program may provide children with bargaining power they need to de-emphasize disadvantageous role expectations most of them share in forming their own identity and strengthen their institutional efficacy. CSA programs may place these role expectations back in line with normative expectations by ensuring that college appears near and thus worthy of action now to children throughout their time in school. CSA programs may also extend this connection to children's identity as members of a community through community-organized third-party contributions to children's CSA accounts. That is, communities that are able to ensure that every child has college savings and forms a college bound identity builds a durable community identity around college attendance and success. High institutional efficacy can reinforce a child's self-efficacy. I refer to this process as a state as institutional facilitation. People who have access to institutional capabilities are more likely to have elevated levels of institutional efficacy, which in turn results in heightened self-efficacy and in trust in their own abilities to solve problems. It is as though the individual feels uninhibited, restrained only by ability and imagination. Self-efficacy theorist Albert Bandura points out, a person with high self-efficacy is more likely to become a reformer, innovator, great writer, or famous actor. Finally, CSAs may provide a way for children to interpret and overcome difficulty, to sustain and work toward an image of a future self as being college-bound. The context must provide a way to address obstacles to attending and completing college. Here, the role of school savings is clear, and this mechanism may provide some particular insights into why school savings are so influential in affecting persistence to college graduation. Children are more likely to act on their college-bound identity when resources augment their effort and ability to make the image a reality. Education is not simply about effort and ability, or even a teacher and a student. Education is also about the ability of children to access computers, the internet, textbooks, cultural events that provide knowledge building and even social events in an era when children's lives are not defined solely by work, but by their ability to interact in social settings. Children's savings accounts can be an institution capable of supporting children's educational aspirations and equipping them with tools to succeed in today's world, rather than seeing the dreams of some children thwarted at every turn. CSAs can harness children's hopes and leverage them for improved educational outcomes. That is, institutional facilitation when it comes to restoring education as an arbiter of equality and opportunity, it just might make all the difference.